Hey everybody, and welcome to the Master Level Marriage Podcast, where we discuss all things marriage and where you can discover the tools that you need to have a strong and healthy relationship. Our host, author, and marriage coach, Dr. Ronnie Gaines, will unpack many facets of a marital relationship as he dives into the dynamics of a marriage. In each episode, you will learn what it takes to succeed in your relationship and win in your marriage. Whether you are in the planning stages or have been married for several years, our desire is to help you grow and enrich your life as a couple and become a success story. Subscribe or follow us and be notified of each episode. Please leave us a review and help us help other couples. For more information, visit www.masterlevelmarriage.com. Thanks for checking us out. Now here's your host, Dr. Ronnie Gaines.
Welcome to the Master Level Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie Gaines, and I'm so glad that you're here with me on this podcast today. In this episode, I'm just going to title it simply this: Stop Getting Offended. You know, we live in a culture where everyone is getting offended. People are offended for you, and you're not even offended. So, we're offended about everything. We can say one thing and they're offended. We can say what we believe and what we think, the other person's offended. You know, I've learned that in this culture we live in, that if you disagree with anyone, it becomes like a hate thing, that I hate you or you hate me because you disagree with me. And I want to say that we need to change that culture, that just because I disagree with you does not mean I hate you. I just don't agree with you. And so we have people just getting offended everywhere. And so one of the chapters I wrote, and I mentioned this in the last episode, the book that I published in February of 2022 is BFF, Becoming Your Spouse's Best Friend Again. And you can get this on Amazon or any other place where you can buy books, or you can get it off my website, and my website is in the show notes. And actually, if you order it from me on my website, you can get it cheaper than you can get it on Amazon. So order one, you can get on our website, you can find it there, and it's free shipping. So get on our website and order the book. One of the chapters that I titled, Stop Getting Offended. And there was a story that I read. It was really an amazing story. It was an article, actually. And it had to do with the Washington Redskins. And, you know, I believe that they have changed their name because of many that were getting offended by the name. And this name had been around for years. And I think they finally gave in and changed the name of the Washington Redskins. We've known the Washington Redskins to be that for many, many years. So I did some research on it, and I found an article from a Native American who was writing this article. He was describing how the name came about, how the name came to be for the Washington Redskins. This name was actually originated and created in honor of the coach and I think 4 to 5 other players on the team that were Native American. And they wanted to honor them in their heritage by naming the team. And I know it changed a couple names because they moved locations, but it became the Washington Redskins. And this individual, this Native American himself, was writing this article about the controversy over the name Washington Redskins. And he was simply saying this: this name was originated in honor of the coach and these players. He said, myself, I'm a Native American. And he said, when I hear that name, I don't get offended. It's an honor. It was used as an honor to honor the Native Americans. The article went on to say that those individuals who are fighting against the name in controversial statements against the name are not even Native Americans. And he's saying, basically he's saying in this article, I'm not offended. And neither are my heritage. We're not offended by the Washington Redskins. So, unfortunately, they changed the name. So we live in a culture that's offended about everything. We're offended by someone's look. We're offended by something someone says. We're offended by something someone says about someone else's something. We're just offended about everything. There was a old commercial on years ago that the actor that was actually on the commercial, his name was Robert Conrad. Some of you that may be older generation, you might remember that name. But he did a commercial, and I think it was Ever Ready Battery. And I really don't know the concept. I really don't know what he meant by this, but the entire commercial is that he took the battery and he placed it on his shoulder and turned loose of it, and this battery was just kind of sitting there on his shoulder. And the phrase in the commercial was, I dare you to knock it off. I really don't know the concept of the commercial and what that even signified. But I feel like that we live in a culture that we have our feelings, our ideas, and again, they're not facts, they're just opinions, and most everybody has opinions. We all have opinions. Most of our opinions are not facts, they're just what we believe. And I believe that we're riding with our feelings and our thoughts and our opinions on our shoulder, and we're daring someone to knock them off so we can be offended. And so we can tell everyone we're offended. On Facebook, we make a post. Someone gets on the post and they disagree with our post, as we interact with the post, or if we give our response, then they're offended by our response. So we get offended just because someone disagrees with us. And then it causes a big argument on Facebook, and then you have people going back and forth, and all at once you've posted something on Facebook. It's your post, and you have people fighting when they should just get on their own Facebook page and fight, but they fight on your post, your comment, and they fight with each other because each one of them begins to get offended because the other one does not agree. You know, it seems funny, and we laugh about it just sitting here. I'm thinking this is so ridiculous that we get offended that easily over something that we don't agree with, and then we want to battle against the person, and we want to prove our point that they are wrong and they've offended me. And in reality, we do this in our relationship. We do this in our marriage. We do the same thing. We get offended, sometimes daily. So when I wrote this chapter, sometimes, some of the best work that we do, our thoughts come out of experience. I've heard it said that experience is your best teacher, and I think I even said this on another episode. Experience is not your best teacher. It is a teacher, but it's not the best teacher. That maybe we can learn from someone else's experience and not have to go through it. But unfortunately, we learn a lot of things from our own experiences. And we get offended daily with our spouse. They say the wrong thing, we get offended. They look at us the wrong way, we get offended. We get offended when they walk in the door because they may have had a bad day, and we take it out. We think it's all about us. So we get offended. I wrote this chapter off of an experience that I had. that one day I was in my office working, and my wife works with me at the church in another office, and she was in her office and she was on the computer and she was right in the middle of something. And you know how you get right in the middle of something, and if you don't finish that, you kind of lose where you are, you kind of lose your thoughts. Well, I had something that I needed to tell her, and what we have to say is so important, right? It's important to us. So I walk into her office and I begin to tell her and ask her a question, and she just kind of put her hand up and she goes, "Can you hang on a second?" Well, I got offended instantly because what I had to say was important and she should have listened to me. And this is the way it works. We get offended. And so I just turned around and walked out of the office. I didn't take but about 5 steps, and I thought to myself, what? Why are you so offended? And I had to think for a second. I'm thinking, why am I so offended by this? Why did that offend me so much? I guess it was because I thought that what I had was so important and she couldn't give up a little bit of her time and just put down whatever she was doing and pay attention to me. It's so foolish. So at that moment, that 5 steps changed my life, and those 5 steps caused me to write this chapter in the book, Stop Getting Offended. At that moment, I just said, stop getting offended. What are you getting offended for? So I went on into my office, sat down and began to work, and pretty soon she finished what she was doing, came into my office. She goes, "Now I can talk to you." She said, "I was on the computer. I had to keep this thought. I had to keep this going. I didn't want to lose my train of thought." She goes, "Now what do you need?" Now here's the key to this whole thing. If I had stayed offended when she walked in, I probably would have said something like, "Never mind. If you didn't have time, just forget it. Forget it." And that's what we do many times is we'll get offended and then we throw our little pity party and pooch out our lip and, "How dare you do this to me? I'm not even going to tell you. I'm not even going to tell you now. If you can't listen to me, and so we throw these little fits, and what that does, it escalates into another conflict, another problem, another argument, and it just stacks. And like I said last week, we had this conflict stacking, and then we start pointing fingers and say, "Well, you did that to me last time." Then we bring up the past, and all this begins to stack, and then when we conflict stack, then it becomes this major problem that should have never happened because we got offended. Stop getting offended about everything. Most things that we get offended about doesn't have anything to do with us. We're just upset because we didn't get our way. You didn't listen to me. I had something important. And sometimes maybe the other person has some things on their mind. They're trying to finish something. She came in and she said, "I'm done. I can listen now." And since I took those 5 steps, and I literally changed my life when it came to being offended. Now, I'm not saying that I haven't got offended again, but I had to refocus my mind and think, stop getting offended. I have to tell myself that all the time. It's not like it's over and I'm not going to mess up again. But at that moment, she said, "Okay, now I can talk to you. What do you need?" And so I went ahead and told her what I needed, and everything was great. It does matter where your relationship is at the time you get offended, because you're going to get offended at some point. I'm going to get offended again. She's going to get offended at something that I do or say or the look that I give her or whatever. These things are going to happen. They're inevitable. But it's what you do in those 5 steps. When you take those 5 steps, change your way of thinking instantly and stop getting offended. It's not always about you. There's something else. And if it turns into a conflict and the person was really being harsh with you, then that becomes a conversation that you need to have. Sit down, it's a conflict. Say, my feelings are hurt. because of what you said to me. Bring it back to yourself. Don't ever point at the person and say, you did this to me, or you offended me. Just sit down and have a conversation and say, listen, I don't know what you're going through right now. I don't know what you're thinking. Maybe it is me. Maybe it's something else. But I really felt that was a little harsh, and I just didn't know what it meant. Can you help me understand why you were so harsh to me? And sometimes I've even said it, and my wife come to me and talk to me. I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't even realize I did that. I didn't even realize I was said that, or didn't realize that I was that harsh. And things can be worked out so much easier if we would just have these conversations and tell your spouse how you feel. We could stop so much of the conflict that we have in our relationships, and things could be so much better if we would just have the conversations. It's that simple. And it matters what you're doing in your relationship when things are good. If your relationship's going really well right now, you're not really in any kind of conflict, you're not in really any kind of argument, take care of that. Make sure you're affirming each other. Make sure that you're having those meaningful conversations, doing the things necessary to promote health in your relationship. Don't just set it aside and say, everything's good. Don't just completely become apathetic and, everything's good. Everything's fine. Everything's good. I don't have to do anything. No, it takes intentional things daily to make the marriage healthy for when you do get offended, or whenever she gets offended or he gets offended. You work through it quickly. I want to say, stop getting offended. Take 5 steps and change your thinking. Stop getting offended. And if you can do that, if you can just do that by yourself, you're going to change a lot of things. But if it was meant to be harsh, or if they meant to snap back at you, then have a conversation. I think sometimes people say, well, we can't communicate well, we're falling apart. Sometimes it's just sitting down and expressing how you feel. Speak your truth in love. Don't speak it in anger, and don't speak it in attacking methods. Just speak your truth. It's okay to have complaints. So many things can be worked out so quickly if we would just take the time to have these meaningful conversations and talk through things, instead of holding them in and waiting till our emotions are high, and then we backfire. We explode. I'll say this in many episodes, this quote that I tell every couple, my classroom, I tell married couples: the speed of a hard conversation determines the intensity of the emotions. The speed of your conversation, your hard conversation, that moment you're offended and you want to talk to that individual and find out why they said what they did to offend you, have that hard conversation quickly. The quicker you have that conversation, the quicker you will settle your life. Nobody wants to live in a chaotic life. No one wants to be arguing and in battle and conflict all the time. Settle it. The speed of that hard conversation, that's the speed of sharing your complaint with your spouse in love, will determine the intensity of your emotions. The longer you wait, the higher the emotions are. The longer you wait, the more you stew on this problem. The more you think about how that person talked to me, how dare him say that to me. We rest on it. We stir on it. It heats up. And then all of a sudden, when we get to a certain point, we explode on that person. And it's much worse when all we would have had to do is have that quick conversation in a speedy manner and say, listen, I don't know what you meant by that, but this is how I feel like you meant it. It may not be how you meant it, but this is how I feel. This is how it made me feel. Is this really what you meant? And sometimes, a lot of times that person will say, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize I said it that way. That's not what I meant. And things can be healed. And that's when we begin to nurture our relationship. Last week we talked about becoming your spouse's best friend again. This is what friends do. Enemies fight and try to hurt each other. Your spouse is your ally. You don't want to hurt them. If someone was trying to hurt your spouse, you would go after them. If someone broke into your home and to harm your spouse, you would do everything in your power to protect them. Yet we daily fire with our voices, with our words, with our attitudes. We fire at our spouse in the intentions of winning and hurting them, and we really don't want to. They're our best friend. We don't want to hurt our best friend. We don't want to hurt them, yet every day we do things and say things that hurt them. I want to encourage you in this podcast to stop getting offended, first of all. But if it rises up in you instantly, sometimes we can't stop things from coming in, but it matters what you do with it if it does come into your mind. It's not the circumstances around you that should determine your outcome. It's the decision you make on how and what meaning you give to the circumstance. If you give a negative meaning, you're going to get offended. It's not that the person came back at you with something harsh that needs to be your outcome, which would be offense, but it's the meaning you give to the harsh comment. Don't hurt each other. Your best friends. Nurture your relationship. And if you nurture your relationship and you understand that you're not out to harm your spouse, then you'll take 5 steps and you'll understand and you'll say to yourself, why am I offended? Why am I getting so offended? Then you can turn it and say, stop getting offended. And then when the time's right, you have those meaningful conversations, those hard conversations, or maybe that person comes to you and says, okay, now I can talk to you. And maybe that person realizes that they were so harsh and they come back and say, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say it that way. But if you get offended and you fight back, it usually causes a defense of a fight. And now we're both into an argument. We're both into the conflict because we cannot handle being attacked. If we feel attacked, we will fight back. It's in our nature. So today, stop getting offended about everything that your spouse does. Have the meaningful conversation. Have the hard conversations. Work things out. Don't hold things in. Speak your truth in love quickly. The speed of a hard conversation determines the intensity of the emotions. Don't let your emotions get to the point where you explode and blow up on the person. Have them quickly, work them out quickly, and live a life that is healthy and loving and fun. It's not fun being in conflict. So stop today. Stop getting offended about everything. Don't follow culture. Don't bow down to culture and be offended about everything. Stop getting offended. And I promise you, it will change your relationship and your life. Today, I hope this has been good. Download these episodes. Leave us a comment. Rate our show. Give some kind of review. Let us know what's going on in your relationship, how you've overcome some kind of offense. Just share with me, and we will interact together. And in future shows, maybe we'll use something that you commented, which will become a show. So today, as always, thank you for being on here with me. I'm your host, Ronnie Gaines of the Master Level Marriage Podcast. And remember this, be your best self, live out your full potential, and experience your best marriage. I will see you on the next show.